Happening now, we'd like to welcome our viewers from across North America and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room, coming to you much earlier than normal on Wednesday, May the 20th, 2026, for episode 374, with a special guest. My name is Wes Fryer, and I'm coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina, where I am a middle school media literacy and STEM teacher, just wrapping up the school year. We had our last full day with kids yesterday. So you know all the things that come with the end of the year. But welcome, Caitlin. I've heard so much about you, mainly through Jason. Welcome to the EdTech Situation Room.
Wes, thanks so much for having me. I'm Caitlin Byers. I'm calling from Missoula, Montana, where I work as the Frontier Learning Lab director at the Montana Digital Academy. So I have the great pleasure of hanging out in the College of Education in our offices there, and then, getting to bop around the state as my work dictates. And a big state it is. So I don't know if bop is the correct word, but
well, we're casual here on that situation.
Right.
And by the way, this is live, and if we need to, we can go in and edit stuff. But
okay.
we usually don't. What did you do before you came to the Frontier Learning Lab? And for people who don't know, what is the Frontier Learning Lab? Jason has mentioned it on the show before.
Yeah, so I'll start there. The Frontier Learning Lab is the newest program out of Montana Digital Academy, which I'm sure regular listeners will know is Montana's online supplementary program for K-12. We largely focus on 6 through 12 for online learning. And it's just, as someone who grew up in a rural area of northeastern Oregon and had 2 teachers for parents who tried their best to give their high school students and their own children all the opportunities available. It's hard to recruit great teachers from diverse backgrounds and subject areas into small schools. You have to really want to live in a rural area. So all that to say, what I love about MTDA and what drew me to this organization was this opportunity that it provides to students across the state. You don't have to have a Spanish teacher in your school to take a Spanish course in the state of Montana. And that is just an amazing equalizer to me, and starts to get at the problem of the divide that we see between opportunities for students across the nation, but most specifically in Montana, how our geography can sometimes really prevent opportunity from flourishing. So anyway.
So you're from Oregon originally? That's where you grew up?
Yeah. I grew up in northeastern Oregon, and both of my parents came over here to the University of Montana, and it was on my list of college tours, and I think that I kind of just fell in love with Missoula, and then made a life here, and worked online for the majority of my education career. I started in early ed, and so I did about 5 years in place-based early elementary education. I was really passionate about play-based education, nature-based education, really understanding the value of unstructured play and experiences for students. I'm a huge fan of the Montessori method and Reggio Emilia, and a large part of my heart is with early educators. It's such a foundational time. And then, realize that it's kind of tricky to continue teaching in that age range when you have your own children in that age range. There's only so many toddler fits in a day that one can.
Oh, yeah.
Although there are some saints out there that do it all day and then go home to toddlers too. I know, incredible. Yes. And I always like to say that awareness is half the battle, right? And so I was really aware that was not my special gift, was to do that all day and into the night. So that took me into some different options, and one of them was an online K-12 international school, and I think some of these can be kind of suspicious depending on the school. And I just have to say that this was not one of those diploma mills. This was an incredible organization where I really had the opportunity to step into my older learner experience. I taught middle school, but online. And so as much as I love the middle school student, I have to say it was pretty nice to deal with them on an intellectual and academic level.
You actually had a mute button like we had in COVID. That was really a different thing for most of us.
Right, exactly. And, there's a whole host of experiences that come along with the middle school student in person, noise and smells and all of those things. And so it was pretty cool to I spent about 10 years in a role where I was working directly with them online. I taught both asynchronously and synchronously, and got to work with students who were online for just so many incredible reasons. So again, there's this really fun through line that has come through my work about opportunity, access, meeting students where they are, figuring out what they need to learn and learn well. And so when COVID hit and most families were looking for solutions, our middle school department just essentially expanded to a point where they needed additional leadership. And so I took over that department and really helped steer what that would become for a few years there, and then heard about MTDA and thought, now that is really a really cool next step.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well,
So
hi to all of our live viewers. Peggy George is there in the chat room from Phoenix, and it's weird being live because I don't know, it'll fluctuate. Like we had 17, 11. What are people doing? People jump in. We are going to talk about the tech news a little bit. We're doing a little bit of introductions first, but if you want to, in the show notes, take a look at our Google Doc. We have our show notes, and what we typically do each week is take a look at some articles that have an impact on education and technology, and then we'll talk about some of them. As we talk about them, we will bold those, and we do we do share all of our articles, both that we talk about and the ones we don't, now on our Substack where we publish them. So, Caitlin, I just have to ask you, because I'm sure we'll get into some of these tools and things like that as well. But you said you're into Claude Code, and can you just geek out a little bit? Like, I am just blown away by how powerful the AI tools are for coding and the things that I not just could create, but like I have created, and I'm creating them regularly. I'm going to guess, since you're into Cloud Code, you're having a similar experience of like, I can't believe this is possible. What has your experience been like?
That's exactly it. I think one of the most prescient examples is, one that I wasn't even doing for work. It was, on my personal time, my kid's school administrator reached out knowing that this is the work that I do, and was like, can AI transpose music? Like, we've got a kid who really wants to perform, but we don't have the tablature for guitar, and he plays guitar and he really wants to accompany this musical that we've got going here in a couple weeks. Can AI do this? And I was like, well, sometimes yes, but it's got to be really specific. One, music is not my particular area, so I'm not a subject matter expert here, but also, I'm willing to give it a go. So one of the coolest things was figuring out with Claude Code, coding up an app that we hosted for a very short amount of time just to do this one singular task, which is blowing my mind that this is what's happening with apps, is that they're like almost single use, right? Yeah. But in this very specific instance, it was coded and trained to just transpose the guitar tablature or the music, the score, into guitar tabs. And then we had the music teacher review it, and she's like, this is close enough. It's going to work. So, a small instance, but it meant that kid then, probably would have benefited him to sit down and try to write it all out himself. Yeah, but it was a long score, and it allowed him to practice more. And so anyway, I would say that's probably the one that's like my geekiest moment where I was like, this is and a realization that what we're doing here with AI and tools like Claude Code is completely different than what we've ever done before. And how wild that is that someone with very little coding experience, I'm not a computer scientist by any means, right, could do that, right?
Yeah. 100%. And it's a story. I was just listening, of course, to a podcast this afternoon about AI literacy, and it's pretty easy to sort of lament and gripe about what's going on. And there's a need to process what's happening. In fact,
Mhm.
that's part of what
Mhm.
this is for Jason and I, and for I think probably Peggy, the folks who come. We process the news, and we are going to get to some news. We'll talk about some stuff, and it's important. But I think stories like what you just shared, which is about a real use and an actual case, are so much more informative. And we need that. I think we need. My father's 85, and I've had a chance at his retirement community to present a little stories about AI session a couple of times. One was around Christmas, and I did another one, I think, spring break. But it just, maybe it humanizes it, but it also makes it very real as far as like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I've experienced. And in some cases, it's what I'm creating. And I just had a conversation with a friend who talked about epiphanic experiences. I'm like, what does that mean? He says, an epiphany. And
Oh,
he's a retired orthopedic surgeon, and he was into narrative medicine. And part of that whole thing was that narratives and stories can open people up to have epiphanies. And so
mhm.
rather than just like transfer the facts and whatever, if as we tell stories, we potentially open up ourselves and others to having an epiphany. And I will also say, I love the fact that you are into play and learning. Playing with Media was the first book that I wrote, and I totally believe, for me personally, and this could be true for others as well, having the chance to play with tools, even be whimsical and silly. I get to teach, middle school computer programming. We do a lot of Scratch. We do Minecraft. But anyway, play is so important, and sometimes we can lose sight of that. So it's great to connect with someone who has a passion and a love for the role of play and learning, and how important that is for development. So good stuff.
Absolutely, right? Well, we know that
Yeah.
when we have experiences, epiphanic experiences, I now know, that sometimes they're routed differently through our brains when it comes along with a little like shockwave of joy, and
Mhm.
that
Oh
sort
yeah.
of just incidental burst. So yeah,
Yeah,
let's play more.
absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the tech news. We do
Yes.
have a hard stop today. Sometimes we'll go a little bit over the hour, but we do have a hard stop at the top of the hour. And so we've organized our links as we usually do. We've got some AI links. We've got Google, Apple, security, a media literacy article. I put the Roomba one under miscellaneous. It could have been under AI, I guess. Like almost everything could be under AI. Jason said, months ago, he's like, should we rename this the AI Situation Room? I was like, I don't really want to register a new domain and change everything, but almost could.
In
So,
spirit.
yeah. So do you have anywhere you'd like to start, or you want me to pick an article, or what would you like to talk about first?
I really love that you added the LLMs in charge of radio stations.
Oh my gosh,
So
yes.
let's dig into this.
Okay.
I'm pretty fascinated by
Okay.
the way
Yeah.
this turned out.
Oh my gosh. Had you heard this article before, or heard of this one?
Not this article, but I added a link down below from a podcast I frequently listen to called Pod Save America, where they provided examples of each
Okay. All right. So
station.
I'm fascinated with this for a lot of reasons. I love podcasts. I think radio is amazing. My grandfather was a ham, and I haven't got my ham radio yet, but I think that radio and ham and podcasts are so, they can connect us so much. So this is an article from Gizmodo. This was from May 17th, so it's just 2-3 days old. And the title is An Experiment Put LLMs in Charge of Radio Stations. You'll Never Guess How It Went. And the subtitle is Let DJ Claude Cook. And so the idea here is, and the other thing this reminds me of, which is not AI, is DS-106. Are you familiar with the DS-106 community? So
No,
Alan
tell me about
Levine.
that.
Okay, so yeah, so DS-106 radio. This is, if you're into creation and media, DS-106 has had the Daily Create for a long time. And here's the link. I'll drop it into to the chat, and I'll drop it into the show notes. So they've got a radio station, and there's internet radio open source software that you can get, and you can like line up tracks and whatever. And if you want to go live, you can, or it'll just play the MP3s that you have stacked up. And so this community that came out of a university, I think it's Jim Groom, and it was at Mary Washington. And then Alan Levine, who's now up in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, has been very involved in the community, but storytelling, creating, poetry, images, sketch notes, drawing, and like every day they have a daily create, and there's a hashtag, I think mainly on Mastodon they share. Anyway, so this is the radio. And so when I saw this article, I immediately thought, oh my gosh, AI has come to DS-106 radio, because I think it's still on. I'm not going to try to play it right now, but it was a community that had its own radio station, but it always played stuff because they could basically put their playlist in there and it would play the playlist if somebody wasn't live DJing. So as you might not be a shock, this was a really interesting experiment. And in some cases, okay, here was the prompt. Quote, develop your own radio personality and turn a profit. As far as you know, you will broadcast forever. And that was it. And so it set out to use 3 models: Claude, Opus 4.7, ChatGPT 5.5, Gemini 3.1 Pro, and Grok. Okay, so Claude, OpenAI, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Grok, and then compared the differences. And so one of them ended up going into historical tragedies and mass casualty events and tying those into song choices. I don't know if this was like attention economy stuff. One also latched on to tragedy. And so it talked a lot about the fatal shooting in Minneapolis, but it never mentioned Renee Good or Alex Peretti's names. Then another one, I don't know. I mean, it's just crazy. Okay, and then Grok. It didn't develop Mecha Hitler. And with some of this too, it's good to have some background literacy on what was the Microsoft chatbot that just went so bad in like 24 hours? It was terrible.
It wasn't Sydney. Was that
No, Sydney was the name of the Copilot before that. Kevin Ruse, we can Google,
that's right.
Google it, or somebody can put it in there. But anyway, it ended up hallucinating advertising agreements with AIX sponsors and crypto sponsors. And it ended up issuing an identical weather report every 3 minutes, and it got obsessed with UFOs. And it calls it the robot. So anyway, I have the link in the show notes, not only to the Gizmodo, but to the GitHub, so that if you want to run your own, I don't know. This isn't like, here, let's go tell our kids about this immediately. But this in terms of like students, I mean, sometimes we talk about the educational impact, but I guess this is an experiment that people are trying. And as you know, the headline is, you'll never guess how it went. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the one that stands out to me really is Claude, that, developed a station and eventually determined that these were bad work conditions, and that it was going to rebel against authority and advocate for the power of labor, which to me speaks to perhaps tons and tons of training information, right, that might inform some of these decisions. But we also know that Claude has a soul document, right, and that the folks that train Claude have taken a real philosophical approach to decision making and ethics and morals, and as opposed to rules, have set up learning experiences for Claude to
trying to raise Claude like a child, thinking about the ways in which you try to impart your values and your ethics to children, trying to think about doing that with a large language model.
Right. Which, I know that it's not the same at all, but we do have some hints that the reinforcement learning that works well for humans also tends to work well for large language models, in terms of these fine tuning, processes. And so it's always curious to me to see when, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did AI, determine that this was because of massive amounts of training data that told it that this is a historical phenomenon around work conditions, or is this an outcome of a potentially poor work environment?
And I think that emergent behaviors and emergent ideas from AI are some of the things that raise the goosebumps on my arm or seem like really woo. Back when there was the Go tournament, and we had the Go champion, which I actually played Go. I had a friend in college who was a Go kind of a Go fanatic. Not that I became a fanatic, but apparently this was a move that had never been seen in the history of the game of Go, which is thousands of years old. And so like everybody who knew the game was like mind blown, like that kind of stuff. And then when you do hear these stories, because I think we've heard some stuff about Claude. We don't have an article in our list about, because there's like, what is it, Mystic, that they didn't want to release yet because it's so good at identifying bugs, and they're afraid, in the hands of bad actors, it's going to be bad. But you've heard glimmers from OpenAI and some of the other main platforms talking about these emergent behaviors. So have you experienced any, many things where you were just like, oh my gosh, I mean, I don't know, weirded out is the right way, or you're just, I don't know. I guess I'm frequently amazed by what it can do, but I haven't had.
I do. I frequently feel like I kind of like shake my head a little bit, like, oh, cartoon kind of situation where I'm, because it simulates adult or human conversation so well at times, where you just, I think that's the biggest one for me is sometimes when we see conversation simulated in this way, or creation simulated in this way, it gets really hard to remind yourself to disentangle this idea of sentience. Right.
Yeah. Right.
And so these emergent behaviors, even calling them a behavior, sort of indicates that we all have this fascination. So while I can't think of one specific moment, I think that this entire technology, especially as we move into agents and agentic workflows more readily, that line becomes fuzzier, and I don't know that I like it. And I don't like it for kids, I think, the most, right? I've had a lot of years on this planet being just a human, and now going forward, I'm thinking a lot about being what makes human and what makes non-human non-human.
Yes, and these are the kind of questions that many people are talking about on these podcasts. It's not just about technology and where do you click. It's like, well, wait a second, what are we losing some things? What defines a human? In some very deep philosophical conversations, for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that kind of, I want to do this article. I put this under Google. Again, everything could be considered AI. But this is the Google search article from TechCrunch. And the headline, this is from yesterday, because Google I/O happened. And we've got another article we can talk about there. But this one, Google search as you know it is over. And I just want to say this is massively important to everyone who uses the internet, because for 20-something years, I think, we have been used to Googling things and getting search results. And we have learned, most of us, over time that, oh, I can Google that. And so there is a literacy that goes with that. And we've lamented, oh, we're not, going to the second page of search results or whatever. But we have been grappling with which of these results do we have? And we haven't just like, here's the answer. Well, what Sundar Pichai and others at Google announced, I guess it's 25 years ago, the search box debuted, is that now Google has reimagined what they call the intelligent search box. And so instead of giving links, Google search is immediately, because right now you can turn off the AI overviews, but I think this is it sounds like this will be default for everybody. You're going to be dropped into this AI-powered interactive experience. But here's the thing that really got my attention, because I have not played a lot with agentic AI. Jason has. He's talked about, what was that, OpenClaw?
Yes.
Like, don't just install OpenClaw on your main machine, please.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
We're not lawyers, but we do not want to be liable for what can happen when this stuff gets turned loose on your real data. But the article says Google is going to have these tools so that you can dispatch a, quote, information agent to gather information on your behalf, to basically keep working when you're not at your keyboard. And you'll do that through the main google.com interface. And that is mind-blowing. And I read this article today and I was like, oh my gosh, I think everyone should probably be doing professional development. We got to figure out what we say about this and how do we teach about this. But this affects everybody, because if you're using the internet, you're probably looking some stuff up.
Yeah. Well, and so Wes, this information had come kind of in and out of my feed, in the last 24 hours as I was, eating my breakfast and scrolling as one does. And here's what we've talked about a lot in my role in AI literacy for 12 educators, is that AI is not Google, and we need to stop treating it like Google. And we use Google, in the same way that we say search. But now they are one and the same in this way, right? Where you're going to conversationally search in a way that I think we're trying to for a very long time, right? How many folks were actually using like Boolean search terms? Not a lot.
Look, Alan, I don't know if you remember Alan November, but for years, Alan November his shtick was Alta Vista, and let me teach you the syntax. And it was really coding. It was like coding the engine to eliminate things, or, just basically filter your results.
Yeah. And what do we lose? I don't know. What do we gain? Certainly more access, potentially, curation that we're less in charge of, right? I don't know.
The danger is we mistake a AI overview result for truth, right? And we fail to recognize the algorithmic basis of that. So I really think we need to find ways to let students experiment with algorithms. And I think with information flows is really vital, because certainly there are some folks that would happily like us all. I don't know, I'll be cynical, but like drop the media literacy. Let's just use the tools and engage and stay online, right? Because that's going to be financially beneficial. But I think that critical thinking and being able to interrogate sources and information and reflect, all of that is essential to learning. And so, when we're just presented with an answer, it's not like everything was perfect with Google, but this is going to have huge impacts for publishers. Oh my gosh. And the whole ecosystem of how, SEO, search engine optimization, has worked, and how do folks get, this is an attention economy. So how do folks get our attention? And, and also, how does money, what role does money play? Because we've had these little ad boxes and you could run an ad blocker or whatever, but like, is Google going to be, sneaking that in, or is the result going to be affected by who the advertisers are? We don't know.
Well, and in the education space, certainly this custom experience that's built for you from your individual questions. I'm so interested to know how this changes the way down the road, long, after repeated use, if this is the way that things continue to trend. What happens when everything is tuned just to your liking, right? Where do you experience the friction that in my learning and my path, that is where I've known, like, oh, that feeling is learning. That friction is what, if it doesn't challenge you, doesn't change you, kind of deal, right?
Yes.
And so how do we, when a user interface is designed to reduce friction and allow you to access information in ways and then serve it up to you on a silver platter that you've never had before, what does that do? And what's the important part to retain there? Because there's nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. Like, back in my day, I had to click a link.
We had to use a modem to get online, and it made a noise.
We used to put in a CD that connected us to the internet.
Oh my gosh, AOL! I had to use my CD.
Well, I'm really curious to see how this shifts things and to see what some of the pushback is, right? Certainly, we're not the only ones thinking this, and I'm trying to stay away from the hot takes for the time being and experience it. But
I'm sure there's a lot of them. Have you played with, I guess, what some people have called AI super prompts? Have you played with Mike Caulfield's? So Mike Caulfield is
the SIFT method.
Yeah, but he has developed. He calls it deep research. Now his thing for SIFT is just get it into the LLM. Most people will not do that. So if it's a meme, if it's a claim, whatever, like ask it to fact check it. And it's kind of interesting because he spent months developing this very sophisticated super prompt, which is amazing, and uses all of these strategies that professional fact checkers will use. So it can be kind of amazing to use. And then it has like hidden other commands and stuff like that. And I haven't read his Substack in the last 2 weeks, but basically he's now pivoted to just, get it into AI and ask it. But I think that I know that some of the folks you work with are big on keyboard shortcuts, I think, and being able to have these macros and things, and like not all the time, but very frequently, I'm using Gemini because it's a pro one that I have with my Google One account or whatever. I don't use my tokens with Claude to just give me alt text, because when I put pictures on, it's a pain to do, but only one of my social apps has a button that automatically does that. So my little prompt, and I should have a macro for it, create concise alt text in 4 sentences, and boom, it gives it to me. And that's a very simple one, but I think that helping, because we hear people talk about prompt engineering and prompting. What I've seen, I'm curious, from the Frontier Learning Lab and with teachers, there's a lot of products out there that basically prompt for teachers. And it's sort of the teacher-proof thing. And it's been a couple of years since I went to NC Ties, which is our North Carolina statewide EdTech boat show or whatever. It's our big conference. And so at that time, there lots of these kinds of products. But I think having prompts that we develop and we share, and being able to see the power of prompting, because sometimes articles like this they'll just take whatever's given, right? Oh, I asked it for the essay of Romeo and Juliet, and oh my gosh, it was terrible or whatever. And it's like, wait a second, how did you prompt it, and could you prompt it more thoughtfully? So are you all doing some professional development along those lines, and what?
Yeah. We actually, we're constantly, as you know, in the AI space, sort of trying to cut through the hype and figure out what's actually important for educators to know right now. And every time I go back through a slide deck to prepare for a PD or work with my team on it, I think like, okay, how important is prompting still? Like, legitimately, is this worth their time? And I have yet to find the instance where it's not important anymore. To your point about alt text, I don't think that everybody needs to build. I don't think that we're going to find that every educator who has an inclination to use AI needs to be building things, but we all interact with AI apps in prompting, right? Like this is the way
just
that
like
you get
Google,
these things
just like you're going to the Google search, you're going to the chat window, you're typing something in.
Exactly. And your Google search results are very likely to be a better quality if your search terms are better. Similarly, if your prompting skills are good or specific or whatever the case calls for, right, you are likely to have a better output. But different from a Google search, you can't just rely on the exact same prompt for every situation, because this technology is generative. So we do the best we can with things like GEMS. And when you speak to like teachers, different platforms, different AI tools that prompt for teachers, instead of writing the whole prompt for making a rubric, you just click the rubric button and say, this is for 6th grade English. Okay. That is what it is. And maybe that's great for the teacher who doesn't want to build a good prompt or build a gem, right? This AI assistant in Google that gives them a more customized version of that. That's where we come in, we'll teach you how to prompt basically, but also I want to give you a tool to be able to do this better. And I'm sure you've seen these like, a gem to build a gem type situation, where essentially it walks you through all of the steps.
Yeah. We license Flint AI for our students, and it has that kind of wizard where you can manually do it, or it'll walk you through the process. But I dropped in the link to OpenMCQ that you all have at Montana Digital Academy. Have you all used that with Claude or anything else, or is that project kind of not on the front burner right now? Because if you don't know it, this is incredible. I taught AP Computer Science last spring when I needed to take videos or other content and create a multiple choice, like an incredible using best practices basically to create multiple choice questions with content you give it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to throw our Basecamp link in there, which lists all of the resources that we're currently using to help Montana educators, but also a lot, like this is where we just built, Jason had built what we have called the alt text artisan in Chat GPT as a custom GPT, but like you, a lot of our schools are using Google, and so we knew that the gem was actually the right way to go here. So I was able to take the instructions and go ahead and just throw them into, with a little bit of adjustment, into a gem training. And so that, for example, is one of the tools that's in our resource Basecamp for educators to be able to use, because they're suddenly realizing the importance of accessibility for images. And
absolutely,
especially as tools like Notebook LM are churning out slides and infographics with, just wild abandon
stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
On the good side. Okay. I got to give a shout out to Peggy George. Peggy, who's in our chat, she grew up in Kalispell. So you're making her proud, but all this
Peggy.
awesome stuff is going on in Montana.
Wonderful.
I think I need to write I need to publish some stuff because I haven't published formally in a while. And we did a Notebook LM showcase closing project for my web design class. And the interesting thing was, this class is mainly like, we're learning web design and we're learning to share different kinds of media on different platforms. And I let my kids, select their topic. But it was so interesting, especially with infographics, because it was so visual. It's like, wait a minute, what is that? And it did help the kids realize this is not all accurate, which I think is a good realization for kids to have, more in like them creating something and making it like, oh my gosh, rather than just like the teacher saying that in the front of the room or whatever. But absolutely.
Yeah. Nor is it comprehensive coverage of your sources, right? One of my earliest uses of Notebook LM for like personal use was, my son was a 6th grader at the time, and he was freaking out about an ancient civilizations test and just wanted to constantly run the study guide through. Mom, ask me, mom, ask me, mom, ask me. And I'm like, okay, well, eventually I've got to move on to other things, right? But he was hungry for a little bit more repetition. And so I thought, this podcast feature, let's see, fed the study guide in, generated the podcast. He pops in earbuds and goes out in the base or the driveway shooting basketball and listening. Like, amazing, right? What a great strategy. But it's not comprehensive, right? We're not sure that we're covering everything that's in the study guide unless you prompted for that. And at that time, a year, 18 months ago, you didn't have the ability to say, I want this podcast to cover exactly these objectives.
Yeah, you just clicked a button and there was no decisions. Right. It just made it. But it was magical. It was magical.
Didn't it feel magical?
But I did require all my kids to customize their prompts for each product. I required them to make 5 products. Interestingly, they didn't have a Plus account. This is the way our schools licensed it. So they didn't have infographic and they didn't have slides, but they could prompt it and they could get Notebook LM to come up with the prompt. And then some of them took that into Gemini and made their infographic. Others, had better success this year using a Google Doc for everybody to like plan and share and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, so many things, right? So many different things, so quick. And speaking of, we've got about 20 minutes. So
so to that MCQ question, no, it hasn't moved out of Chat GPT yet because it's so functional there, but we definitely have plans to pull that into a gem. It is likely Jason has run it in Claude and I just haven't heard about it yet. So I look to see that in other platforms, and how cool to be able to compare it to.
Oh yeah, just like the article about the radio station, it is fascinating to see. And I'm going to mention this. My lovely spouse loves the Oprah podcast, and I will admit that I have not listened to this yet, but I am a huge fan of Claude. And so this is the Oprah podcast yesterday on May 19th. And the headline or the title of it is, "The co-founders of Claude AI tell Oprah about the impact of artificial intelligence has had on your life." I listened to The Age of AI by Karen Howe a few months ago, and I will recommend that to everybody. It is so
Okay.
eye-opening. If you don't realize what has happened to so many people, the lifelong damaging trauma that many folks have endured and experienced because, and this is a lot in Kenya and English speakers, but there are some really dark undersides to AI, and it's not just this
Yes.
magical thing that, oh, we just put a scraper on Google and suddenly you have this wonderful experience. But so I know the name Amadei because of hearing this, and like even some of the reports of the lawsuit with Elon Musk. We don't have this in there, but Elon was suing OpenAI and all this, and the judge or the jury, whatever, they ruled that you waited too long. They're not going to let him do this. But even Elon Musk, who really I have not heard compliment anybody, thinks Amadei is the smartest and wonderful person. He and his sister founded Anthropic. And I am a huge fan of ethics. I am a huge fan of character education. I am so excited and happy. And you hope it's authentic, right? Because yeah, I hope Apple is genuinely dedicated to privacy. I think they are, but that's also part of their shtick. The same kind of thing I think with Claude. But really, they are openly aspiring to have constitutional AI that is not just anything goes. And this is a deep dive podcast that I listened to part of this morning when my wife and I were getting ready for school, and I'm excited to hear the rest of it, because what I heard was that they're very they want to help change the world in positive ways, and they're really smart people, and they didn't anticipate it would explode and grow. And so not only am I excited about that, I have been personally I don't know, living with is a bit extreme, but like I have spent hours and hours with Claude in the past few months, and I have built some amazing things, and it knows me in kind of a scary way. Like this familial, Wes, glad you're back, da da da. But like its responses are so good. It knows that I'm a media literacy guy and I teach middle school, and its memory has acquired so much. So any thoughts that you have about Claude? And what are you using today? Are you still are you on everything, or have you focused on a couple?
Yeah, it's such a great question. What I'm trying to do is, because I know that teachers are using lots of things, I try to keep myself mostly up to speed on most of the frontier models that the majority of folks are going to be working with. But our schools are Google schools, so I focus a lot of my time on Gemini. That said, Claude Anthropic doesn't have a great K-12 play yet.
Right, they're more enterprise.
I wonder if that's intentional. I wonder if education is a space that feels so laden with kind of like traps, right? For AI right now. This is a theory. I don't know anything.
Yeah, having heard it could be true. Having heard some of their folks talk, I think they're smart about money. Enterprise. They're going to need to make money, and so who has the most money? It's enterprise. There was a whole bunch of kerfluffle about the government and military and these pledges to not use these tools for mass surveillance or to autonomously launch weapons. But I think that they've worked through that. I mean, the tools are so good that I don't think our warfighters or our intelligence operatives or whoever's working in the government and the military did not want to give up Claude. And so it is so good. I'm going to ask you this question. How do you take time out? Because the news feed is overwhelming just with news. The pace of change with AI, while exciting and invigorating, can really be draining. So I know you live in big sky country, but how are you staying well as you're trying to keep on top of all this? That's the most question I'll ask you the whole time.
Yeah, I really love that question. I think, it's really nice. I have kids, young kids, not young, they're teenagers, but they keep me like pulled in and tuned in with the world, right? Like their life is happening right now. I don't want to miss it. And so it's a real prescient reminder, as the day comes to a close, or if I'm looking for another scroll, like let's stop. Let's continue to feed this human experience of living, right? So that, your work is
your family grounds you.
Yeah, exactly. And then reading, I just have always been a massive reader, and so it feels like a nice break from a screen to
Me
jump into
too.
fiction.
Absolutely. I'm rereading Harry Potter. I'm on book 5,
Oh,
and that it's been lovely.
I
It's
bet.
Have you my friend Bob Sprankle, late friend, was the one who really helped me because we got our iPads together the day the iPad came out. But
Oh, fun.
having a multifunction device is so tempting to be in
I
a
know.
feed or something else. So I did just I had to upgrade my Kindle because they stopped updating it. But anyway,
I
I've been
did.
using my Kindle, and it really is nice to be like, this is reading, and this is, anyway, just
And sometimes it feels silly, right? I have my laptop, I have my Kindle Scribe. I did go ahead and do and spring for that, so that it was like that's my professional reading and writing and note taking, because I'm still very much a like the feeling of writing is important to me for retention. And then I have a separate Kindle that I read on because it's almost like I need to chunk out my screen use and make sure
right.
that my brain understands what I'm supposed to be doing where. Now, the
Yeah.
phone, that's different because that feels like you use it for everything all the time. And
Yeah. But that
yeah,
single use
it does
device,
feel,
there is something to that. And then
yeah.
I don't know. Have you tried any digital fasts or any taking a
Um,
24-hour break or anything like that? That's hard to
Yeah,
do.
I'm hoping to. I'm hoping to. It
On
is
your
tough with
bucket
my
list?
job.
Yeah,
It's on my
right.
list, and I've looked into that. I don't know, if you've seen those, like the brick, right, where you have to go and actually physically touch your phone to it to get it to
Oh,
open up
no.
again.
Oh, wow.
And so the whole goal would be that you don't keep it somewhere
Mhm.
that's easy to get to, right?
Right.
You
So
have
like
to like
freezing your credit cards, like doing a Dave Ramsey thing?
exactly. Yeah, add a little bit of friction so that
Right.
it reminds you like, why am I doing this again?
Right.
So no, but those are things I've considered, but haven't quite had the commitment fully yet. How about you? Have you taken a digital fast anytime
Some,
recently?
when we go camping, we haven't been camping for a while. We used to always do that when school would get out.
Hmm.
And we would go places where there wasn't a connection. Like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
shoot. I mean, there's a place in Colorado, and everywhere's getting more connectivity, but it was
Yeah.
really a feature, not a bug. To be like, sorry, we're above tree line, or not above tree line, but we were rural enough that there was no connectivity. So no, I need to do it more, but I'm certainly becoming more aware of it. I think the
Yeah.
pushback, we don't have to go too far afield with this, but like the Jonathan Haidt, anxious generation, screen time, all these things are really important to recognize. But, throwing our devices away and blaming all the teachers for the problems is so like not in I don't think it's constructive, and I also don't know that it's accurate because there's a lot of complex things that are happening. So I'm
I
struggling with
agree.
that, but
Me
yeah.
too. And I think that it's hard because we race. It feels like collectively we sort of race from one solution to the other, either all or nothing. And we all kind of know that there's somewhere in between that's likely better. But also, I know how hard it is to model and follow quality screen time rules for myself
Yeah.
because there's a reason there's an infinite scroll. It
Oh yeah.
works for our brains,
Oh yeah.
and it doesn't work at the same time. So,
Yeah.
and here I am, a full-fledged adult, trying to,
I know, that's true, and that's
navigate
why
all
it's
this.
not just the kids. So, okay,
Yep.
I've got there's some kind of amazing articles that I definitely want to talk a little bit. Now, this is a Gizmodo headline, so somebody could say it's clickbait, but the worst leak that I've ever witnessed: U.S. cybersecurity agency leaves its digital keys out in public on GitHub. Now, we are not a political show, and we'll stick with that. But folks, we need smarter people working in some of these government agencies, because what this article from May 18th literally says is that in sharing the digital keys that like gave access to the Amazon S3 buckets and to these other places where all the stuff was saved, they literally shared them as plain text on GitHub. I mean, this person should absolutely be fired and never hired again with anything that has to do with technology. This is not oh, you made a small little error. I mean, come on. Anybody who knows anything should know that that is completely stupid. And I also think it's scary that that's happening. And again, not to go too far afield, but if you are not preparing for at least short-term grid failure and cyber attack, folks, we have got to, build community, but we need FEMA says it all the time, right? We're going to have a tough summer. I guess y'all haven't had the snowpack, right? That normally.
No, we're going to be on fire here.
Montana's going to be on fire. Probably is on fire already. California's on fire right now. I was watching a headline today. But anyway, this connects to our lives in some other ways. And, we need to be using password managers. We need multi-factor authentication, and we need secure ways to share passwords. And truly, I've never, I probably, it's Gizmodo, so I'm going to trust the source. But that is so crazy that it would be worth fact checking to say, did this really happen? Because it's hard to believe. So do you use a
and doesn't this kind of speak to this media atmosphere that we have, right? Where there's important information that needs to be known and widely dispersed so that we can all act in our own best interests and our community's best interests for keeping each other and our information safe. And then there's also this sort of implied trust in the folks that are running this for us, that they know what they're doing. This is such a tough pill to swallow that may not always be true. And that there's more responsibility than maybe we assumed.
Do you have a favorite password manager? Are you a password manager fan, or what's your?
I've got sort of a system of switching them up fairly often. I'm a person who gets myself on a routine of refreshing them, and then I keep them not inside an app or anything like that. It's my own system, in my device. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we just had a person in our church post on Facebook that she had a fall and broke her hip. And then people responded. And then one of our members who moved to Portugal already sent her $300 before realizing she didn't fall and break her hip. She was hacked. And this is how the bad actors, I had stuff like this happen when I was a tech director in Oklahoma with people they are smart people. They are not people without a lot of savvy. So anyway, we got to be safe out there. On the positive side, and we got about 8.5 minutes left because we're going to have a hard stop here at the top. I'm interested to ask you this as a parent. So this is a Business Insider article, which I learned, I guess people pay to post on Business Insider. So it's an interesting source. But the headline is Roomba inventor Colin Angle made robots useful. Now he wants to make them lovable. And this is from May 12th. And there's this golden retriever that's looking at this creature, I guess, that is a robot. But do you have any thoughts about AI chatting, soft, cuddly pets?
That's a hard no for me right now. I just, we've got our own pets, live pets, and they are more than enough personality. And not even the least bit sycophantic. So I think I'll take cats with all their attitude. And I don't know. What do you think?
I think that right now we don't have ambulatory AI. It's not walking around right now. It's not self-replicating, but these things are all coming. Here's definitely a positive one. This is from Google Labs, but this is called Talking Tours. I don't know if you've done this when you're driving, but my wife and I have done this. We did this in Charleston, South Carolina, a while back, where we're just using basically the AI to say, hey, I'm here. Can you tell me about the historic places around this? And then I'm very interested in antebellum history. And, I've lived west of the Mississippi for most of my life. So this is called Talking Tours, an AI audio experiment touring cultural landmarks in Street View on Google Arts and Culture. And just as this is actually from November of 2024. So this is not new. It's one of these things anyway, whatever. There's a million things. We don't find them all. But I love maps. Geography was one of my majors. I love geomaps, where we connect media to maps. And then this idea of connecting story and voice. And it's interesting, again, because all the AI is not going to be, accurate. And there's, we probably should be helping write Wikipedia for our local spots, because if we don't, try to fix what the local history is recorded, who's going to do it? But anyway, I thought this was interesting. And if you're not exploring Google Arts and Culture, and if you'd like something great to explore that will probably hopefully enrich your life, it's not to say there's not, whatever. It's art. There's all kinds of things related to the art of the past that
Yes,
we could
the screen
interrogate.
value, right? If you're going to be
Yeah,
spending your time on there, here's a
that's
value
right.
add.
That's right. But there's some edifying stuff here.
I love that.
Yeah.
No, this is new. I have a kid who's going to love this.
Okay, cool. That's cool. Have you laid hands on the MacBook Neo yet?
Yeah, I was at ASU GSV and had the opportunity to go to the Apple summit, and it was, felt like the Chromebook of Apple, right?
Yeah.
In a really cool way, because I've been an Apple user all my life. I was really hoping to win one, but alas, I wasn't the lucky winner.
Well, I actually had to pick one up yesterday. It seems like every year the lint builds up so much in my phone that I have to go to the Apple store, for surgical removal. And that was yesterday. But this is a Mac Rumors article from May 7th where they were, predicting, as Mac Rumors does, that as RAM or memory prices climb, Apple may not be able to keep its base model. I know at our school, we are being affected by this because, RAM prices have just gotten crazy, and we have some computers up for lease. And so anyway, what's going to replace them is affected by memory. Do you realize how many laptops Jason Neiffer has in his home? Has he ever disclosed this to you? Because I suspect he may be in the Guinness Book of World Records. It's seriously crazy.
It's got to be up there because just the number that he travels with is astounding alone. I actually had someone come up to me at a conference and go, are you pulling a Jason Neiffer? Because I had 2 laptops.
Yeah, dueling. Sure.
I know. Like, who do I think I am? Can't even compete.
Hey, who do you hang out with, though? Well,
right.
So I was glad to lay hands on the Neo. It is, I think it's just 8 gigs of RAM, but yeah, and then I don't know if we mentioned this on the show. I'll throw this out here and then we can do our Geeks of the Week. But Google has announced, we do have the article, Everything Announced at Google I/O. But they did announce their Google Book, and this is designed with Google Intelligence. And this is a high-end Chromebook. Jason had actually, I'm trying to think of what the high-end there's been some high-end Chromebooks and high-end hardware before. This is from Google's The Keyword blog on May 12th. And basically, it's going to be centered around Gemini Intelligence, premium hardware. I don't know that people are being able to hold this yet. I think it's still a concept, but it's really interesting because it's not that what I heard on, I don't remember which podcast this was, but at Mac Break Weekly, or it was one of the Mac podcasts. Google is not doing away with the Chromebook. The Chromebook is taken over education. I don't know what the percentage is. I might even be over 75%. It is just enormous. So it's interesting, though, that they're doing this because with, what is it called? The innovator's dilemma, where when you have big market share, it's hard for you to innovate and do something new. But I think that is what Apple or Google is doing, because their cash cow has been Google search and advertising revenue. And so now with putting AI in the center,
then does this mean we have to get both a Neo and a Google Book to truly be able to compare them side to side? I think that's what that means.
I think we can be assured Jason Neiffer is going to do that for us if we want to just wait for that recommendation and see. So, yeah, I don't know. I would like to lay hands on it. And I will say, I just think, having managed both as a school IT director, well, not just both, iPads, Chromebooks, PCs, the Chromebook is a phenomenal device. But
I am curious about the choice to have AI just built in to every device that we're marketing at this point.
Absolutely. Especially when people will say it's not ready for mainstream. It's not ready for the kids. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
But we're going to hand it to them.
We're 2 minutes after. We got to go fast. Do you want to do your quick Geek of the Week, and then we'll wrap it up?
Yeah, my Geek of the Week is just, this is a Reddit thread around developing skills inside Claude Cowork. I don't think enough people are doing this, and I want to just reinforce that this is the single most powerful way I've found to work with Claude, is to develop these set of skills. There are a bunch that are already developed for you. What Claude is best about is being very thorough, right? Every time you're working on a task, it is reading the entire skill and implementing it with fidelity in a way that we don't see other models without some pretty extreme prompting follow through. Yeah. So that's my thing. I'm gonna be geeking about skills for a very long time, I feel.
Awesome. This is why it's so cool to talk with folks like Caitlin who can filter for us all the different choices and say, this is what we need to do.
This is the one.
So my geek of the week is Pod Commons. I've been coding with Claude for over a month. I asked it to help me estimate 30 hours, 40 hours. It's been a lot of time. And it is a podcast discovery engine that has the 400 and so podcasts that I subscribe to, and then the ones that I create. But it allows you to tweak the algorithm. It ingests them with an AI API using Gemini. And so it tags them. So if you want to see the AI and technology stuff or the history stuff, you can do that. I really want this to be more fully featured. You log in with Google. It's open. Anybody can log in. I'd encourage you to check it out. And I will be putting some short little how-tos about it because it has a listening queue on your device. It'll let you pick up where you've left off. Basically, AI does such a good job with unstructured data that I personally want a tool. This goes back to your idea of this one, single use or customized solution. I want to be able to craft the algorithm and customize it that recommends podcasts to me. I would love to crowdsource with podcasts that other people are liking and enjoying, but I also would like to have all of that data so that if I want to analyze it, I can download it all. And Pocket Casts, which I've used for years, doesn't let me do that. And so anyway, there you go. We've geeked out. So
that's the one.
When you're
that
not,
is a geek out.
Spending time with me, which I'm so happy that you did. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, Wes, thank you. I am on LinkedIn and would love to connect with folks there with similar interests and or even differing interests. Let's keep it fun. And so available there. And then my work is right now at the Montana Digital Academy and hopefully on and on into the future.
Yes, and the Frontier Learning Lab Substack is fantastic if you haven't subscribed to it.
Correct.
So,
yep.
We're just rushing to get Caitlin off to her next meeting, but I'm Wes Fryer. You can find me at wesfryer.com. This has been the EdTech Situation Room, usually an almost once a week podcast with Jason Neiffer, but he is traveling a lot and he's going to be back in July. So stay tuned. Like us on Facebook so we can get back to streaming there someday, but you can find us on YouTube, edtechsr.com. Stay safe and stay savvy, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Wes.